If the last time you flew was 2 or 3 years ago, I need to tell you something before your next trip. A number of the rules you are carefully following do not exist anymore. They were retired. Quietly, with very little fanfare, and in at least one case after nearly 20 years of everybody doing it without question. Which means right now, there are travelers in their 60s and 70s standing in line, taking off shoes they no longer need to take off, and worrying about a document requirement they already satisfy. Meanwhile, the changes that genuinely do affect them are the ones almost nobody has explained. So let me fix that. 7 things that are different at American airports going into 2026. What each one actually means for you, and the ones worth changing your habits over. And I am going to be honest with you about something up front, because this channel is not in the business of telling you what you want to hear. Not every one of these is an age rule. Some of the biggest changes apply to everybody in the line, but the reason they matter more to you is that older travelers are, on average, the most careful travelers in the airport. You are the ones who prepare. And when a rule changes, the careful traveler is the one still following the old version, because the careless one was never following it anyway. Number 7 is the one that catches people hardest, and number 2 is a genuine benefit that a lot of people over 75 have never been told they have. Let me start with the biggest one. Number 1, the shoes come off rule is gone. In July of 2025, the requirement to remove your shoes at American checkpoints ended. Not relaxed, ended. It had been in place since 2006, it applied to nearly everybody, and it is simply no longer part of standard screening. Scanning technology improved enough that walking your shoes through the machine separately stopped adding anything. For older travelers, this is a bigger deal than it sounds, and I want to explain why. Taking shoes off and putting them back on at a checkpoint means balancing on one foot in a crowded line with a bag on your shoulder and people behind you. It is one of the genuinely undignified parts of flying, and it is a real fall risk. That is now gone for everyone. 2 caveats worth hearing. An officer can still ask you to remove your shoes if something flags, and this is an American rule, so it does not travel with you. Plenty of airports overseas still ask. Number 2, if you are 75 or older, you have accommodations that go beyond that. Here is the number I most want you to hear correctly, because it gets misreported constantly. The age-based accommodations at American checkpoints begin at 75, not 65. 65 is the number that shows up in headlines, and it is wrong. At 75 and over, you may keep a light jacket on through screening. You may ask to be seated during a pat-down rather than standing. And if you cannot stand for screening at all, you will be screened by other methods rather than being asked to do something you physically cannot do. That last one matters enormously, and almost nobody knows to ask. If standing in the scanner with your arms above your head is difficult or painful, you do not have to do it. You say so, and they will find another way. It is not a favor, it is published procedure. There is a second half to this that almost nobody mentions, and it is the part I would actually act on. You do not have to be 75 to ask for help. Any traveler, at any age, can request assistance from the curb all the way to the seat, and it is provided free. You arrange it with your airline when you book, or by calling them at least 48 hours ahead. Somebody meets you at the door, handles your bag, takes you through security in a dedicated lane, and gets you to the gate. I have watched people in their late 60s struggle across an enormous terminal with a connecting flight 40 minutes away because in their mind that service is for people far worse off than they are. It is not. It exists for anyone who would find the walk difficult, and using it does not take it away from anyone else. If you have a connection at a large hub, request it. Chicago, Atlanta, Dallas, and Denver can involve a mile of walking between gates, and there is no prize for doing it the hard way. Number 3. The identification requirement is now genuinely enforced. Since May of 2025, you need identification that meets the federal standard to board a domestic flight. In practice, for most people, that means a driver's license with a star in the corner or a passport. Here is why I am not worried about most of you, and it is worth saying because this rule caused a lot of unnecessary anxiety. If you hold a valid United States passport, you are already fine, and you always were. The passport satisfies the requirement completely, and so does a passport card, which is wallet-sized and considerably cheaper. A trusted traveler card works. An active military identification works. Enhanced licenses from a handful of states work. So the practical question is not whether you have the right license. It is whether you have any one of those things. If you have a current passport in a drawer, you can stop thinking about this today. Two details worth knowing because they come up constantly. The first is what happens if you turn up without acceptable identification. It is not automatically the end of your trip. There is an identity verification process where an officer asks you questions to confirm who you are against other records. It works reasonably often. It also takes time, it is not guaranteed, and it will not survive a tight connection. Treat it as a safety net and never as a plan. The second is the name on the ticket. It has to match the identification, not closely. Exactly. This bites older travelers more than anyone else, and almost always in one of two ways: a married name on the license and a maiden name on a ticket booked years ago by a relative, or a middle initial that appears on one document and not the other. Check this the day you book, not the day you fly. Airlines will correct a name for free or for a small fee well in advance. At the airport on the morning of departure, it becomes a much more expensive conversation. Number 4. The liquid rule did not change, whatever you have heard. There was a great deal of talk in 2025 about the liquid limit being reviewed, and a lot of headlines got ahead of themselves. As things stand, the rule is exactly what it has been: 3.4 ounces per container, all of it in one quart-sized bag. What has changed is the machine. Newer scanners are being installed at hundreds of airports, and at checkpoints that have them, you may be waved through without unpacking your liquids or your laptop at all. That is why your experience now varies so much airport to airport, and even lane to lane. It is not inconsistency. It is a rollout in progress. Pack for the old rule. Enjoy it when the new machine lets you skip it. Number 5. Medically necessary liquids remain exempt, and this is the exemption most worth knowing. Liquid medication is not subject to the 3.4-ounce limit. You can carry a full-sized bottle, saline, liquid nutrition, gel packs to keep something cold, and water to take pills with all fall under the same exemption. The condition is that you declare it before screening starts. Take it out, put it in the bin separately, say the words out loud. That is the entire process. Undeclared, it reads as an oversized liquid nobody mentioned, and your bag comes off the belt. If you take a like from this video and leave a comment, it genuinely helps this reach the people who need it. Number 6. Power banks are increasingly restricted in the cabin. Through 2025, a growing number of airlines changed their rules on portable chargers after several onboard battery incidents. The direction is consistent even though the details vary by carrier. Power banks must be in the cabin, never in a checked bag, and a rising number of airlines now ask you not to use them or charge from them during flight. If you carry a battery pack for a phone or a hearing aid case, check your specific airline before you fly. This is the rule changing fastest right now. And number 7, the one that catches people hardest, because it is not a checkpoint rule at all. Number 7, the airport has moved to your phone, and the paper alternatives are getting harder to find. Gate assignments change on an app. Delay notices arrive by text. Boarding passes are increasingly digital by default, and at a growing number of airports, the staffed counter opens later and closes earlier than it used to, because the airline expects you to have checked in online. None of that is a rule in the way the other 6 are. There is no regulation requiring you to own a smartphone, and you can still be issued a paper boarding pass. But the system is now built around the assumption that you have one, and if you do not, the gap is not in the rules. It is in how quickly you find out that your gate changed. So here is the practical version. If you do not use a smartphone, arrive earlier than you think you need to, ask at the counter to have the gate written down, and check the boards more often than feels necessary. And if there is someone traveling with you who does use one, have them put the flight in their app and turn notifications on. There is one more version of this that is worth a minute on its own, because it is where the digital shift costs real money rather than just time. When a flight is canceled, the airline app will often offer you a rebooking option within seconds before the announcement is even made at the gate. By the time a line has formed at the desk, the good seats on the next flight are frequently gone, taken by people who never left their chair. If you are not going to use the app, then the moment you hear the word "canceled," do two things at once. Get in the line at the gate and call the airline on the phone while you are standing in it. Whichever one reaches a human first is the one you use. Standing in a line and only standing in a line is the slowest option available to you, and it is the one most people default to. And know this, if your flight is canceled and you decide not to travel, you are entitled to a refund of the unused portion of your fare. A cash refund, not a voucher, if that is what you want. Airlines will offer the voucher first because they always do. You can decline it and ask for the refund, and they have to give it to you. Now let me pull this together, because 7 items is a lot to hold and there are really only 3 things you need to act on. Your shoes stay on. That is a genuine improvement, and it applies to you today. If you are 75 or older, you can ask to be seated for a pat-down, and you can ask for an alternative if you cannot stand for the scanner. Ask. It is your entitlement and it is underused. And if you have a valid passport, your identification question is already settled. Everything else on this list is either unchanged or a machine getting better at its job. I want to close with the thing I actually believe about all of this, because I think it gets lost. Airport security feels adversarial. It is designed to be efficient rather than warm, and when you are older and moving a little slower, an efficient system can feel like it is pushing you along. But almost every accommodation you would want already exists, written down, waiting for somebody to ask for it. The seated pat-down, the alternative screening, the declared medication, the assistance from the curb to the gate that you can request from your airline for free when you book. The travelers who have an easy time are not the ones who know the most rules. They are the ones who ask. Every one of those accommodations was put in place because somebody decided older travelers deserved a better experience than the one the standard line gives them. Not using them does not make you tougher. It just means the effort somebody went to on your behalf goes to waste. Now, knowing the rules is one half of this. The other half is the handful of mistakes that experienced travelers simply never make, and they have almost nothing to do with security. I have gone through the 5 biggest ones in the next video, and the first one costs older travelers more money than every other mistake combined. Subscribe so it finds you. And tell me in the comments, when did you last fly, and what has changed most since then? I find those answers genuinely fascinating.